99-cent rental.
This is 99 Cent Rental. I'm your host, Brian White, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Dave White. Hey, Dave, how you doing over there?
Well, I don't know about you, but I feel like this has been the longest goddamn month of my life.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know about you, but like for no particular reason over here, I feel like it's been July for like fucking ever.
Yeah, I feel like it's been like 2 weeks longer than it's supposed to be. And I think part of that is like, I consume a lot of like political news throughout my week, and it has
it's been a busy month.
Goddamn roller coaster up in here. I'll tell you what, though. I will tell you what. I think regardless of how people on the left feel about Biden or the Biden administration or Kamala Harris in particular, I think
they're all gonna flock to RFK, right? No, do not mistake me. I am joking. Oh my God, am I kidding?
Let's not do that again, everybody. We made that mistake once. No, I feel like people are, regardless of policy opinions, like I feel like people are hopeful, or they feel like they can be hopeful again, and that is, God damn it, that was a welcome experience. Like whether you like her or not, at least it's just like I don't have to watch this 82-year-old man go down in flames in this like kind of sad, shambling way. That was regardless of how you feel about Joe Biden, it's like, no one's legacy should kind of be shot down in quite that way. And like,
there's also like an upside to this where, again, regardless of how you feel about these two, watching the Republicans just fucking panic has been chef's kiss.
And I have to admit it has been kind of nice. The whole JD Vance couch fucker thing, I think that is hilarious. And I had not heard about this until I said something to Eileen, and then she said something about JD Vance, that couch fucker. And I was like, wait, what's this now? Couch fucker? And I went and looked it up, and it brought me so much joy.
You're not as online as the rest of us, so that must have been quite a treat.
It was, it was the best. It was just the best. But you know what? To top it all off, I found a place recently that serves just the most delicious turkey Reuben sandwich. And that
I'm listening.
Like that was the biggest part. Like I'm just like, Kamala Harris, fine, that's great, but like turkey Reuben, go on.
I'll tell you what. there is a magnificence about finding a place that makes a truly delicious sandwich.
Yeah, well,
it's like finding a gas station that makes really good pizza, like legitimately good pizza.
Yeah, we were kind of like a not a wasteland of food last place we lived, but like where we moved to now, it is just we are rich with delicious restaurants, and I am very thankful for that because I can go, 1,000 feet in either direction and hit upon many, many delicious places. But I was particularly happy about this turkey room. I've now had 2 of them this month, and goddamn it, I will have another.
Is there a chicken and rice guys near you?
Yeah, sort of. There's one in Harvard Square, I think, which is not.
Okay.
It's not that far.
The one thing that I miss most about working in Boston.
Oh, right, they had that one down by South Station.
By South Station, I ate there like 4 times.
Yeah, we used to eat there like at least a couple times a week when I worked in the financial district until the place got shut down because of like E. coli or something. And then, or like listeria. And I was like, ever since then, I was just like, I don't think I need chicken and rice. But they do have one. I think it's in Harvard Square.
Goddamn, I missed that place.
Food.
Hey, so movies, right?
Hey!
It's hard to explain to someone who never had the experience what a trip to the video store was like back in the day. The shelves were choked with absolutely bizarre crap made on tiny budgets, completely divorced from any recognizable reality, and it was the best. And we intend to talk about every one of them. Just before we get into it, here's a little housekeeping. If you want to keep up with us between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram at BringMeTheAxePod. And Dave's over there at that Queer Wolf. It's fun. We're fun. Is what I'm trying to say, and if you're not following us, and I know, everybody be on the socials these days, you can find us there. That's where we're most active and where we have the most fun. I am also on TikTok
doing dances
singing songs. Dances at Bring Me the Next. But let's not sow that rumor because people will be like, oh, I can't wait to watch.
I tell everybody when I see them, just like, here's what you got to do. You got to get on the TikTok, because of the dances.
Then they'll be like expecting to like see me like dance, and then they're just gonna see me going like, "Hey, it's me, it's my face," and you got to look at me. I'm sorry.
And then they're just like, "Well, when's he gonna start doing the bump or like whatever kids do?" I don't know. I don't use the internet.
Never. Yeah. So yeah, look us up by name over there. And if you don't know, we have another show called Bring Me the Axe. Our latest episode covering John Carpenter's The Fog is out now. And we'll be back next week with a look at the arch 90s slasher, I Know What You Did Last Summer.
It's gonna be
You
so
can also
good.
contact us directly at 99centrentalpod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or suggestions. Do let us know if there's a cheesy movie that you love and would like to hear us give it the business. And we got a little list. I got a little growing list. We got people coming at us from all sides saying, "Hey, do this one, do that one." So, yeah, you know. And lastly, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube now. Search us by name and subscribe if you prefer to consume your podcast that way. And you'd be doing us a favor by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So fucking do it. I don't know what you're waiting for.
No shit. That is super important. Does everybody know that? Does everybody know, like, that's how your shit gets moved up in like by the algorithm or whatever.
Yeah,
however
I mean, there's
it
a
works,
lot.
I don't know.
There's a lot to it. I mean, there's a lot of metrics that our listeners do not see that go into it. But yeah, that's a big part of it also. It just kind of shows engagement that people are actually listening to it. And if you listen on YouTube, do us a favor and give the episode a like and leave a comment. That kind of engagement actually goes a long way, and it's actually helping. We've been growing significantly over there, and we've only been on YouTube for a couple of months.
And every time I hear YouTube, I think, is this 2005?
No, man, YouTube is a major media outlet.
Look, I know nothing about the internet. I barely use it.
Yeah, we do love hearing from you guys, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Like, some of you guys send me some really nice little messages of just encouragement and shit, and it's validating in a way that touches me, and I keeps me going. I love to hear it. I just want to get that all out of the way right at the top of the show, because here's a taste of what we're watching today.
Freeze! This is the police. Drop your weapons and place your hands above your heads.
On Saturday, 6 members of the gang known as Street Thunder were ambushed by the police. On Sunday, the warlords of Street Thunder swore a blood oath to avenge their dead. For the gang called Street Thunder, it is a day of vengeance. It's war in the streets.
Oh, Jesus, come on. Come on, I'll give you my money. Just don't hurt me, please. Please.
It's terror in the night. It's the most shattering assault on a police station in history. Assault on Precinct 13.
This is a siege. It's a goddamn siege. You're gonna stay here and hold until somebody comes, okay? We're in the middle of a city, inside a police station.
What does that mean?
They're not afraid to die. Any of them. They want to rip us apart, no matter what it costs. It means to the death.
Precinct 13, cut off, isolated in the middle of a city, as a human wave of street killers turns the night into a nightmare.
We got a war going on down here. We can't find the damn thing.
A white-hot night of hate. Assault on Precinct 13.
That's a scratchy soundtrack too, man. All that popping and scratching.
Hey, remember that time John Carpenter remade Rio Bravo, but like slower and with no money, and somehow less interesting? No, I do not mean that. I do like this movie quite a bit.
I do too. This is a tough one because it's real early in Carpenter's career, and you can see him working some shit out like on the screen, and he's not quite there yet.
Oh yeah, the writing in this movie is bad.
It's Yeah, well, so we'll talk about it a little bit as we get into it, but like, there's kind of a reason. Like, he started out with these guys these producers who came to him and were like, "Look, we love Dark Star. It's fantastic. You're clearly a capable director. We will fund whatever the hell you want to do." And he's like, "Great, I'm going to make a Western in the style of Howard Hawks." And they were like, "Well, hang on. Here's $100,000. See what you can do with that." And he's like,
And it was like his college friend's father or something like that, or his uncle.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, it was basically like a couple of guys attached to him.
Yeah, this is a USC production through and through.
But it's a significant step up from Dark Star, which I watched last night deliberately to compare this movie against, because, man, this is like light years away from where he was coming from.
Yeah, and
Dark Star is a rough watch.
He's acknowledged that too, because Dark Star took them a couple years to make, because what they were doing was they would like shoot a couple of scenes and then they'd run out of money and then they'd have to like go out and get more money. And so like they were financing as they were going along, and so there would be like 6 months where they weren't doing anything. This is the first time he got to make a movie from beginning to end all at once.
Oh yeah, it's the Jim Van Beber approach to filmmaking, where like he gets a little bit of money and then he makes a little bit of his money of his movie with that money, and then he spends the rest on alcohol.
Which is amazing, because Jim Van Beber has like 25 movies. I mean, to be fair, they probably cost $12,000.
Most Van Beber movies are like 5 or 6 minutes long
and not good.
I do actually like Deadbeat at Dawn quite a bit, and I also
is that the Manson one?
No, that's his weird like action, like self-made action movie. The stunts in that movie are crazy. Like, he threw himself off of buildings and
I think he's probably mentally ill. Is he dead?
No, he's still alive. But yeah, also I like his Manson movie quite a bit as well. But yeah, that was the whole thing with him, is like it takes him years and years and years to make the movies that he tries to make. But yeah, it shouldn't have taken John Carpenter that long, because Dark Star.
I was just saying to you, I chose this. So I chose both of these. I chose this one. So we did Halloween last October, obviously. And that would be his second movie. So, or I guess technically his third.
Yeah, I consider this. I
consider this his
Assault on
first
Precinct
movie.
13 his first movie, his first feature proper.
Yep.
Because Dark Star was really a short film that was later expanded into a feature length, mostly just because like people were genuinely surprised what this film student was doing. Because like when you view it through that lens, Dark Star is a pretty impressive.
I mean, same for
movie.
this. The reason this movie eventually did so well is because people were like, "Wait, it cost how much money?"
Right, and that's and again, like, I want to talk about this a little bit. We mentioned this in The Fog, where he used like anamorphic widescreen and like very expensive cameras, mostly at the insistence of Dean Cundy. But there's no Dean Cundy on this movie, and so but he still uses that anamorphic widescreen, and so
because that's what Howard Hawks would have done.
Yeah, and so this movie looks like an expensive feature. He also spent a significant amount of the budget on sound cutting,
which is they did the same thing. I mean, we talked about this with Halloween. They did the same thing. Like, he insisted on those two things because he knew that could make or break your movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and film processing was the other thing. Is he did not want this movie to look, because like $100,000 is not a lot of money. Like, Texas Chainsaw was made on that, and that's a movie that, as much as I like Texas Chainsaw, that looks like a movie that was made on 16 millimeter. Yep. Like, it's not a terribly impressive production.
And it just happens to lend itself to the sort of aesthetic of Texas Chainsaw. That's kind of what you want. You don't want it with this, though.
No.
But I think that the reason I wanted to do this is because I think you can really see where he's going to go. Because this is really just a kind of a knockoff, you know, it's Rio Bravo. It's essentially, that is exactly what it is, down to certain shots. Like, there are moments that are pretty much recreations. And I think there's a little bit like The Searchers in there. I fucking hate those movies, so I'm not too familiar with Westerns, but I know the big ones.
Unfortunately, all of his favorite Westerns have John Wayne in
Oh,
them,
and John
I
Wayne.
fucking hate John Wayne.
Y'all, John Wayne is the fucking worst. He is was a terrible person, an awful man. He was like a horrible homophobe, a huge misogynist, wicked racist.
Extremely racist, and a huge, huge pussy on top of it all. He went out of his way to not have to go to World War II.
Anything you need to know about John Wayne, all you have to do is listen to what he said to Marlon Brando after Marlon Brando gave up his Oscar speech to Sacheen Littlefeather. And she came out and sort of gave an activist speech, and people were real shitty to her. John Wayne was extremely racist and like super, super rude to him about it. And like, that's all you need to know about him. Like, that's the kind of person he was. So you know what, Marion, you can go fuck yourself. I'm glad you're dead.
Yeah. So, shall we do the facts? Run it down?
Yes.
All right. The year was 1976. Year of our Lord.
Heck of a year.
Yeah. So here, well, let's talk about some of the movies that came out in 1976. 76, The Message came out. Are you familiar with this?
Gene Hackman?
No. This is
that's The Conversation.
No, this is Mustafa Akkad's epic about the Prophet Muhammad.
Oh no.
Yeah, I've never seen it. It popped up when I was looking. I was like, hey, what else came out in 76? And I was like, that one. It's relevant because Mustafa Akkad is.
I feel like
vital.
that's not for me. That is not a movie for me.
Probably not. I probably wouldn't find it terribly interesting, but yeah, Mustafa Akkad is absolutely vital to the trajectory of John Carpenter's career, so it bears mention. Also that year, The Savage Bees came out.
Yes. Fucking love that movie.
Big year. It's a couple of years. It's a year on from Jaws, so it was a big year for animal attack movies.
And I believe Savage Bees is a TV movie.
Maybe there's several like Killer Bees movies.
Yeah, and they're all awesome.
I confuse all of them. Yeah,
and by awesome I mean terrible and wonderful.
Yep. We got Riding with Death came out. Which features very mellow Ben Murphy.
I've never heard of it.
Oh, you've heard of it. It was on Mystery Science Theater.
Okay.
It's actually
seen it.
It's several episodes of that show edited into like a feature length movie that they did for TV. It's the one where the guy can turn himself invisible. I think the TV show was called The Gemini Man.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, Grizzly also came out in 1976. Yeah.
Fucking love that movie.
That was pretty fucking great too. And closing out 1976, not a bad movie by any stretch. New Fist of Fury came out. That was the first Jackie Chan movie to reach American shores. Yeah. Yep. The title. When I first saw the title, I was like, "Oh shit, is that a Bruceploitation movie?" But no, it's just they're just capitalizing on the popularity of Bruce Lee. So, cast and crew, as we mentioned, John Carpenter making his third and definitely not the last appearance on this podcast.
Nope, I'll do them all.
The second in 2 weeks.
Well, except for the last few.
It is inevitable that like we eventually get to like Escape from New York and They Live and Prince of Darkness and Big Trouble.
And you can see that's another reason why I wanted to do this one, because if when we get to those, you can see a lot of They Live and definitely Escape from New York in this.
Okay, so yes, that's the thing with this is when they came when he was like, I'm going to do a Western, and they went, well, maybe not. Here's the budget that we can give you. He actually went to his Escape from New York script, which he was writing. He and Nick Castle were writing at the time of this production. And you could just see it. Like there's that kind of like that recurring joke that's sort of like, it means somebody to someone, like to something to someone in the production, but to the rest of us, it's just this thing that keeps coming up. Like in Escape from New York, it's I heard you were dead, which is actually some shit that he lifted from Big Jake. But in this one, it's got a cigarette.
Yeah, which is actually a thing he lifted from Howard Hawks.
Yeah,
so.
right. And you know, the whole Wilson character is really sort of like the first draft of Snake Plissken, and like
and you can see that in his mannerisms, in the dialogue, the sort of patter throughout the movie.
Yeah, because he's not as like acidic and biting as Snake Plissken is, but he's definitely like that's the kind of the drifter who comes to town to sort of to save everybody. Like that's the character that he's pulling.
And I'll tell you what, Darwin Johnston is no Kurt Russell.
No, he's not. But I do. He's a strong point in this movie for me. I like him a lot in this. Cast includes Austin Stoker, a dude with a varied career, even within the confines of the B-movie scene. His first role was in the final Planet of the Apes movie, Battle for the Planet of the Apes. And he also
Planet of the Apes. I want to get off.
Yep, we really made a monkey out of him. And he also had a voice on the animated Planet of the Apes TV show, Return to the Planet of the Apes.
He's in Sheba Baby, which is an awesome movie.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he's in Abby, the sort of blaxploitation exorcist ripoff. Yeah, he's done everything from like He's in I think he's in 3 from Hell, that Rob Zombie movie, and he even shows up in a Neil Breen movie. He's in Double Down.
He is. This is mostly a theater actor.
Yeah,
like a stage actor.
Yeah. And then as we were talking about Napoleon Wilson, we got Darwin Jostin. We just saw him in The Fog playing Dr. Fibes, and it helped out enormously that he was John Carpenter's neighbor at the time of this production.
There's like no casting for this movie. He just grabbed whoever he could.
Yeah, a lot of USC students who were just like, get to be in a movie and get all bloody? Hell yeah. Yeah. So this guy does a bit of television until the mid 80s when the roles seem to dry up, and he makes a shift over to being a Teamster. So
he's in Eraserhead too.
Yep. Oh yes, he is.
No,
yeah, he's so lazy. So lazy.
I blew
and
it.
surly.
So lazy and surly. Teamsters.
Yep. And Jesus, man, it's a shotgun blast of Simpsons references tonight.
2 for 2.
Yep. And Laurie Zimmer is going to close it out, whose career was unfortunately very short. This is her first feature, and she acts in a total of 5 movies before retiring from the biz in 1979. Unfortunately, she's fucking great in this.
She's pretty good at this. I love on her filmography. If you look at IMDb, she's in a movie called Primetime. And her character is Miracle White Lady. And now I'm sure it's probably not what I'm thinking, but I'm just thinking like Miracle, like, oh, thank you, Miracle White Lady. I appreciate the 50 cents.
Yeah. She is the subject of a strange documentary made by the director of one of the few features that she was in. They wanted to know where she went and why she quit acting. And it turns out, as of that documentary, she's a school teacher in San Francisco. Yep. And we also get Nancy Loomis.
Yeah.
In her first movie with Carpenter, I guess it's gonna take.
It's her first movie ever.
Yes, yeah, it's gonna take Deborah Hill for her to really sort of come into the kind of the character that we really seem to like her for.
And you can really feel. So Deborah Hill, she did work on this movie. This is where they met, but she had nothing to do with like the writing or the direction, and you can feel it because the women in this, I mean, to be fair, all of the characters in this are pretty one-dimensional, but the women in particular are pretty one-dimensional.
But I'll tell you what, it passes the Bechdel test.
That is true. It does. And actually, I will say it does, because it's hard to criticize the writing because he's really just ripping off old Westerns. Like this character is it Lee? Is that her name?
Yeah, she's Lee.
She's got that like tough, owns the brothel kind of lady. Like she's that like the madam in town. Like she's a real badass. She gets shot and doesn't even fucking flinch. And it's like she's such a fucking cliche that it's so hard to be like, well, his writing is not good. It's like it's not good because he's writing someone else's movie.
Yeah. I mean, because like this is the point where he just wanted to do covers of his favorite stuff.
Yeah.
Which I totally fucking get. Like if somebody were like, hey Brian, here's some money, make a movie, I would just do my favorite shit. And it would probably come off like a John Carpenter movie. But yeah, she's definitely, if we were to sort of like analogize her to Rio Bravo, she is Ricky Nelson's character in that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sassy Ricky Nelson.
The
brothel owner.
She's so stoic.
Yeah, she's a real tough broad.
Yeah. So we get a couple of taglines here for this movie, and the one that I love most is this one: "A white hot night of hate."
Yeah, that's my favorite one too.
And then we got this one: "A cop with a war on his hands, his enemy an army of street killers, his only ally a convicted killer." And none of these are actually true. A white hot night of hate, I would say, is pretty.
I guess maybe, but I'm going to argue something later on, and it's going to be real radical, I think.
Yeah. So this originally, as we sort of alluded to, when Dark Star had been out for a little while, and it had actually like made a little bit of money, a couple of guys who it was sort of like that guy, the producer for Return of the Living Dead, they have nothing to do with the film industry, but they're like, hey, we want to make movies. We will like fund 2 movies for you, John Carpenter, and you can do whatever you wanted. And at the time he was going to do this movie was originally a Western, like we said, and then he had to pare it down. His other script was something called Eyes at the time, which it's the Eyes of Laura Mars.
Eyes of Laura Mars, yeah. But, which is a great movie.
Which it is. It's quite good. That one ends up in the hands of John Peters and Barbara Streisand. So like,
But it's still his script, and it's pretty faithful, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he gets credit for it in the titles for that one. It's a good movie. Hey, go watch The Eyes of Laura Mars. You'll thank me later.
I watched it recently, and it holds up pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's very 70s, but
the original title of this movie is The Anderson Alamo, which is a little wobbly, if you ask me.
Yeah, I would not want to watch a movie called The Anderson Alamo.
Is
it a fucking Western?
And then he was like, fine, we'll call it The Siege. And when it ended up with Irwin Yablans, he was like, that name kind of fucking sucks. Listen, we'll call it Assault on Precinct 13 because it takes place at Precinct 13. And Carpenter was like, actually, and he was like, shut up, Precinct 13. And so here we are.
Don't be so pedantic, John Carpenter. Well, really, it's Precinct 14.
It's actually Precinct 9, District 13. And then in the fucking movie, the sign says
it's District 14. Yeah.
So, yeah. And also, when he was making this movie, Carpenter did basically what Robert Rodriguez did on El Mariachi, where he performs many production duties throughout this and post-production duties in order to save money, obviously, and to make it seem like a larger production than it was. He used pseudonyms throughout the credits, so it doesn't look like he was a one-man show on this movie.
And I mean, he's not
he is not. There is
I'm going to say there's like
a
6
proper
people.
crew behind this movie, but
yeah, you got Tommy Lee Wallace, you got John Carpenter, you got you got the original, the core gangs here.
Curiously, no Nick Castle. I don't think he's on this one.
Nope.
Yeah.
No, there's a bunch of people. I think this really is like all film school. These are like the people he was in film school with, and they're like, and their girlfriends. Like that's why. That's why Nancy Loomis is in this. That's why I think that's kind of how Deborah Hill gets involved with it.
Yeah,
she's someone else's girlfriend at the time. Nancy Loomis is Tommy Lee Wallace's girlfriend. Because even Nancy Loomis uses a pseudonym in this.
Does she?
Yeah, she's the not the prop master, wardrobe.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, she whatever. She goes by a different name now. It's Kais. And that's the name that appears in that credit, which I was like, Is that her mother or something? But no, guess not. No. The entire score was composed in 3 days and was so memorable that the main theme, primarily lifted from Lalo Schifrin's Dirty Harry score, and also Immigrant Song by Zeppelin, has been sampled to death by hip-hop producers a bunch and was lifted.
It is a badass score.
It is really pretty good. Compared to the stuff he's about to do, it is minimal as hell. But it's way, way different because he also did the music famously for Dark Star. Dark Star sounds so different from this.
Yeah, Dark Star kind of sucks.
There's nothing about it that I remember except for that song that they play. I think it's called Benson, Arizona. That's the only song that I remember from that movie. I watched it last night. But like this one has a theme that will get stuck in your head, but it's super, super minimalist. And a lot of that has to do, again, like I won't get too deep into the fucking synthesizer nerd shit, but like this was before synthesizers had like onboard memory. So when you made
it's a fucking deck.
When you made a sound with a synthesizer, it meant like plugging shit into like a patch bay and like you had cables and shit going everywhere. And like you had to remember like what the dials were like. So you had to like write down what your patches were. And then when you came back to them, you had to like plug everything in. It was a real fucking ordeal. You know, eventually,
if you want to see how this shit really looks, like by an actual professional, look up either Mort Garson or Wendy Carlos doing this, like in the late 60s, early 70s. It is wild to see them do it because it's like back when people started DJing, like in like the Bronx, and they've got like tons of just shit that you've got to flip switches and hit scratch records. They're really just plugging shit in left and right, and like hitting buttons and moving faders, and like it is wild to watch them do it.
It's super crazy, which is why the Prophet 5 really revolutionizes things in the late 70s, including the fucking Halloween soundtrack, and then eventually, the like basically pop music in the 80s is like launched off the back of that fucking thing because you could just like save your patches on that one.
And you can thank Giorgio Moroder for that.
Yeah. Also, Carpenter edited this on a Moviola, which sounds like something that Mr. Burns would own. But if you've never stop right now, go look up a Moviola, and you will really appreciate what it was like to actually make a movie. Because when I look at that thing, it seems to me like actually shooting, writing, producing a movie is the easy part. Like editing on that thing looks like a fucking nightmare.
They premiered it on the kinetoscope.
It's like this thing. It's got like little like reels going everywhere, and a little scope that you look in. You have to look into. It's very dim, and you don't even see the full frame. Oh God!
Is this the one where it has like the actual like it looks kind of like a paper cutter, like a little paper cutter?
No, those are editors that came along like in the 50s and 60s. The Moviola was something that like they made like silent films on it and stuff. Like they were still using those like in the 50s, but like technology came along and eventually like editing desks that had like the thing where you actually like loop the film through and bring the blade down and stuff. It's even more primitive than that.
And like a bunch of them like kind of took turns editing this. Like he did most of the editing, but like Tommy Lee Wallace did some of the editing. Some other guy did some of the editing.
I would imagine that this production came together really fast because like they were just doing shit.
They did the whole thing in like 6 weeks.
Yeah, fucking crazy. That's like an Italian schedule. You know?
Yeah. But like in when they're making like Italian exploitation, they didn't give a shit what it looked like at the end.
Nope. No anamorphic widescreen for Fulci.
No.
Oh, so yeah, back to the score. I want to play something for you because this'll blow your mind a little bit. Okay, so here's the original theme. Okay, so hold that in your head because
this is the version I have.
Because here's New Year's Day by U2.
Yep. And they've acknowledged this. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. That's fucking nuts.
They've acknowledged it though. Like they've said that as much that like that is basically where they got that.
That is fucking funny because and it kind of tracks too because this movie when it finally did get released, it basically like landed very quietly in the United States and then vanished. But then they take it to Cannes where it gets picked up by
not Cannes. They take it to London Film Festival.
Oh, is that where? Okay, so yeah, they pick it up where it gets picked up by a guy named Michael Myers, which we mentioned in our Halloween episode, and he. I think he takes it to Edinburgh also and takes it to Cannes, and it hits like crazy in England, and that's really.
And I think there's a reason for that, though. We've talked about this a bunch of times on various movies that we've watched in the last however many years, and when this comes out, there is a lot like we are on the real back end of White Flight in a real bad way. And so there's all this fear and sort of hand-wringing and hysteria around urban crime in America. And this is as close as John Carpenter will ever get to an exploitation movie. And so like you see it in The Warriors, you see it in like when we watch Siege.
Oh yeah, Death Wish was a big influence on this one.
Yeah, there's a lot of like there's like vigilante stuff. There's a lot of fear about urban crime and I think John Carpenter's theory was that Americans wanted something more like Death Wish or more like The Warriors or like, violent action movies where there's like obvious good and bad guys and everybody sort of like, and it wins in the end or whatever, it gets resolved in the end. And so this is a very slow movie that is rooted in a sort of like a cinematic tradition from the past. And it just did not resonate with Americans. But because American movies got to England later and they just weren't having the same issues there, they were still having those issues, just not quite in the same way, that it really did resonate with European audiences quite a bit. And so they kind of flocked to it. And then people started talking more about it. And it kind of comes back to, because I could not find any contemporary reviews of this from 76 in the US, none.
Which makes sense because like it really did like escape the public eye here. Like this was a movie that people came to very late. Like for a lot of Americans, their very first exposure to John Carpenter is Halloween, right?
Yeah.
You know, like this, and then eventually they're like, oh shit, he made a movie before that also. Also, I gotta kind of wonder if, because we discussed this a little bit in the Fog episode, where there is a political motivation to a lot of those vigilante movies. That is very obvious. It's very apparent. It appeals to white people in the flyover states and in the suburbs and shit like that. People with like lifetime memberships to the NRA. Those are not Carpenter's politics, and so it doesn't really come through in the same way that like Vigilante or The Exterminator comes across, right?
No, not at all. But because you could see that he doesn't, there's a villain in this, obviously. There are, we can just call them the villain because it's really just sort of a universal body of people, I guess. You never know who they are.
You very seldom even see their faces. They're just like shadows.
He kind of like intentionally goes out of his way to make them an interracial gang, which I would say is a little bit problematic, but
I know.
Because that's way off the mark. But he does recognize that, like, there were, things in South Central Los Angeles were really getting quite bad at the time. That's where some of this was shot.
Right. Yeah. This is. I think this was all shot around Venice, which is really kind of like on the edge.
That's where the police station was.
Okay.
The exterior, the interior is all set, but there's again no moral judgments in this. The movie never tells us anything about the gang or how to feel about them. It's whereas like the Warriors is a little bit more sympathetic towards their gangs.
Yeah.
This doesn't. They are the bad guys only in that they're trying to kill the people that we like. But we only like them because we don't know who the other ones are.
Right. As a matter of fact, like I'll put a pin in it. I'll save it for when we actually get to the plot, because like the movie hits the ground running in a really fucking weird way, and that sort of speaks to what you're talking about right now.
And that, I think, was part of like he had to do, because you're talking about the opening, the insert shot opening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a kind of an explanation for that too. But yeah, he never really says anything about who they are or why they are. They're not good or bad to us. They're just the invading force.
It's implied. Like, look at these fucking weirdos, these like filthy dudes in this like fucked up flop house who just stole all these guns. Like, here are your villains.
And there is a supernatural aspect to them, almost. Like, they do feel, it feels as though he's presenting you with this supernatural element of the story, where they're like, this is just a malevolent force. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're never really going to see what they look like beyond the few in the beginning. You'll never really see them. It doesn't matter. Like, the way they move is bizarre. What they're doing is bizarre. They have no motives, ostensibly. They're just this force to be reckoned with, and that's all they are. Whereas, if you watch something like Death Wish, those are drug dealers and rapists. Like, you hate them because you see them rape people.
The giggling bands of psychopaths, plus Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah. Who is a rapist? It's very upsetting. Don't watch.
I don't want to see Jeff Goldblum that way. Why you got to do that, Michael Winner? Yeah, because it's Michael.
I think you know why.
It's Michael Winner. That's why.
Because he's a bad person. Yep.
So this movie was remade in 2005 because fucking of course it was.
Bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, by Jean-Francois Richet with Ethan Hawke and Lawrence Fishburne. I've never seen it. I hear it's all right.
Nope. I've never seen it.
Yeah. It's also been lifted entirely and remade primarily in France for some reason. 2002's The Nest is legally distinct from the original, but it's almost a 1-to-1 remake with Sami Nasseri from the Taxi movies in it. It's pretty fucking great.
It's a little bit hard though, because it is such a basic premise.
It really is. Like, that's the thing is, it's these are obvious references to the original, but like, what exactly are you ripping off? Because at the same time, John Carpenter was ripping off Howard Hawks. Yeah. So like I guess all's fair.
In some cases, shot for shot.
Yeah. And also, The Nest is really, really good. I recommend it. Also, Alpha Creep, Luc Besson produced one of the coolest action movies I've ever seen. It's a movie called District B13, which not only lifts most of its notes from Assault, it's also a ridiculous ripoff of Escape from New York. And all of the fight scenes and action scenes are parkour. It's incredible. They're like dudes jump over moving cars, and they're like flying off of buildings and shit. It's crazy.
Yeah, look, Luc Besson makes good movies.
I hate it. I fucking hate
I don't want him to, but he does.
I hate this fact. God damn it. Yeah. So you said no, you got no reviews whatsoever. You didn't even find anything in England?
Well, so I eventually did. So I found there's a couple interesting things. So like we said, it premieres at the London Film Festival, where it is kind of a hit. Like it's the hit of the London Film Festival.
Like the big surprise that nobody was expecting.
Yeah. And again, it was because a lot of it had to do with people being like, who is this guy? He's made nothing yet. And so there were other movies there that I think were quite bad. And so this was kind of a shining star. So this is from The Guardian. And it says, the success story of John Carpenter's racy Assault on Precinct 13. Not sure why it's racy, but okay. Made up for Death Trap, Tobe Hooper's awful sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which it's not a sequel. It's just the movie he made after, and it's not good. Because Carpenter's film was unquestionably one of the hits of the festival and should make its lucky English distributor rub his hands with glee. And the reason I took that whole quote is because I liked the idea of him rubbing his hands with glee.
Michael Myers, the man who handled distribution in the UK.
Yes,
all I see is
his
the
fingers.
shape, like rubbing his hands with glee.
Let's see. So that is from an article about the London Film Festival. This is from the review of the movie from that. It says, even with totally one-dimensional characters and one or two really nasty moments Hawks would never have permitted for a moment, I sincerely hope that Carpenter will soon be recognized in his home country as the lively and proficient filmmaker he certainly is.
All right.
Well, guess what? He will.
He definitely will. That's fucking awesome.
The Daily Mirror did not like it, and I don't have put any value on the Daily Mirror because it's a fucking rag and it's useless.
Yeah.
But it was one of the few reviews I could find. So it says the film generates a lot of sweaty suspense, and there's a standout performance from Darwin Jostin as a convicted murderer forced to become an unlikely hero. That's literally like the extent of the review.
Was it sweaty performance?
Sweaty suspense.
Sweady suspense.
You could call it a sweaty performance.
Yeah, we're going to call it hashtag sweaty suspense to go with hashtag greasy jeans.
Greasy jeans. The last one this is from 79. So this is Vincent Canby, after Halloween came out. And it says, if the movie is really about anything at all, it's about methods of urban warfare and defense. Mr. Carpenter is an extremely resourceful director whose ability to construct films entirely out of action and movement suggests that he may one day be a director to rank with Don Siegel. Now, I pulled this for a couple of reasons, because again, I think Vincent Canby,
because he basically
he's
just
usually
said what
right.
we said about The Fog. Like, this is a movie
that was why this is one of the reasons I pulled it, because it was like, that's the same fucking thing about The Fog, and you seem to dislike that considerably, whereas you liked this one. But he's also not wrong. This movie it just moves. There's not a lot of story. It's just action all the time, except for the beginning, which is quite long and slow. But I also think it's interesting to say he might rank with Don Siegel. Well, he's actually, I think, much, much better than Don Siegel.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the extent of it, is people are like, it's for what it is and who he was at the time, it's pretty impressive. You know who was really unhappy with it?
Oh, God.
Dan O'Bannon.
I know. So, Dan, good God, when they were making this, Dan was in France with Jodorowsky.
No, he came to Carpenter invited him to the premiere of the movie.
Oh, okay.
Because he was like, you're my friend. Please come see my movie. I like you. We've made things together. And guess who had an opposite reaction to that?
God, O'Bannon, why are you so weird?
Yeah, he said, so here's what O'Bannon said about the movie. He says, his disdain for human beings would be serviced if he could make a film without people in it. And my note is, or maybe he just didn't like you, Dan O'Bannon, because you have a personality disorder.
No, good God. I mean, as much as I was like, oh, Dark Star, O'Bannon is the strongest part of that movie, for sure. But like, also, he is a well-known weirdo and a very, very, very hard person to work with. So maybe after they got done slaving away on that movie, Carpenter was like, I think I've had enough Dan for a little while.
Yeah. And so, but like, he invited him. He's like, come see my movie. I'm very proud of it. And like, O'Bannon just shits on it.
Yeah.
And now look, John Carpenter is kind of a weirdo too.
Yeah.
Like he has a very strange sense of humor. And he's I think maybe more than a little aloof a lot of the time. And which can be kind of much when I see it. I'm like, can you just fucking get over yourself? And I love this guy, but for fuck's sake. Yeah. But to like be like, come see my movie, and O'Bannon shows up and he's just like, fuck you, your movie's terrible. You're so mean to everybody. Why am I not famous like you are? Which is really what I think it all comes down to.
I do get a little of that because like this is a rough patch for O'Bannon. Like he is.
Well, but see, this is what happened with O'Bannon. I don't want to go off on this tangent, but like this is what always seems to happen with Dan O'Bannon is like, he would make a thing and people would be like, hey, that's pretty good. And then within a couple of months, they'd be like, yeah, but I don't think I want to keep talking to you. You're not very nice. I don't like you.
Right.
And so it's like he would shoot himself in the foot because he had like terrible interpersonal skills.
Yeah.
And so like, I think he would look at people like Carpenter because they came out of the same program. And he's looking at people like Carpenter being like, well, why can't I have that? It's like, because you're a miserable cunt. That's why.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas John Carpenter, yeah, he's a giant weirdo and he's like, you know, a little bit smug, but he's kind of charming in a way.
Yeah.
He's got that same thing that Stephen King has where you're like, you're a bit of an asshole, but I kind of like you. Right. You're charming at the same time.
I see him on like, I'll see him every now and then. And I can tell like in recent years as he's been doing the convention circuit, like out in California, you could tell that he doesn't seem to care for that, but he does it probably because there's a lot of money in it.
Well, he's also a lot of the time seems to be like out there pushing his wife's comic company.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
I think it's called Storm. Is it called Storm King?
I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called.
But at the same time, like I have listened to the commentary tracks of stuff that he's done with Kurt Russell, and he is fucking hilarious. And he really seems he really seems to like Kurt Russell a lot, and they have great chemistry and vibe, and they're really, really funny. And those commentaries seem to be front to back. Doesn't matter what the fucking movie is. It seems to be Kurt Russell trying to make John Carpenter laugh and succeeding.
Yep. But on his own, I've watched the Kurt Russell ones before for The Thing and for Escape from New York, and I have watched this one for this. I watched it this weekend, and I watched the Christine, and they are dry as fuck because he's so technical, and he's also so self-critical that he will be like, "Oh God, you can see a reflection in that shot." It's like, no, you can see a reflection in that shot. The rest of us can't.
There is something in here. Apparently, he when they were making the sort of final cut of the movie, because of this fucking primitive device that they have to cut the movie on, he cuts a scene wrong. And he ends up actually chopping the footage like in the middle of the frame instead of like to the side of the frame where it's supposed to be. And I've read like interview snippets where he just like agonizes and labors over this fucking point. And I have watched the movie now twice in a couple of days looking for this errant cut, and I cannot.
Oh, I can tell you where it is. I can tell you where it is because when you know where it is, because he points it out in the thing. When you know where it is, it's very obvious. You're like, oh, okay, I kind of get that one actually.
All right. But yeah, good God, like, dude.
Because it's in the moment where they're all trying to climb in through the windows and it's like total chaos. There's a million cuts in it.
So it's easy to fucking miss it because that scene is nuts.
Yeah, but yeah, he's a little, sometimes you're like, okay, just move along, John Carpenter. But yeah, I just
take your soul off, John.
It's funny that like, this is just more evidence that like Dan O'Bannon was just an insufferable asshole.
Yeah. Because I'll tell you what, I don't know what movie he was watching. I like these characters. I mean, I know what he's pointing out is the fact that the gang has no character to it. The gang is just a presence.
Yeah, and that's
fair, but also it's by design. He did this on purpose. They're supposed to be a force to be reckoned with. It's not like it's not like Mad Max or the Road Warrior where we get these awesome scenes of the Lord Humongous and shit. Like there's none of that.
They're the Horde. That's all they are.
That's all they are. Yeah.
And that is a thing that is lifted from old westerns where we'll call them natives. They were really just this kind of marauding force. And that was the thing that had to be kind of pushed back and repelled. And that's it. That's all they are. You don't know who any of them are. It doesn't matter. Like America.
In your face, America.
Yeah. Suck it, America. Treat people better.
Yeah. So, shall we? Shall we do this?
I think we should.
We open on shadowy, heavily armed gang members shuffling silently into an alley at 3 a.m. How do we know this? There's a title card.
It also has. It really reminds me of. Remember the Rhythm Nation video?
Yes.
It has that feeling where they all sort of like kind of march in, and it's just shuffling feet and like shoveling like wind pants.
Yeah,
sound, like rubbing together.
Hats with metal pieces on them for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is the scene that it is clearly an insert shot, and I am going to guess that either he watched it afterwards or someone else watched it, and they were like, "You got to put something in here to like kind of tell us something."
Yeah, you got to set us up.
Who are
it's
they?
like
What
at
is
the
going
beginning
on?
of the fog. Like you got to give us a little something to kind of move the ball along at first.
Right, because this gang is. This sets up the idea of what is actually happening in Los Angeles at the time is that it's the mid 70s and lots of people are coming back from, or either have come back or are coming back from Vietnam. There's no fucking jobs. I mean, Bruce Springsteen is all about it. And so this is literally where the gangs in South Central Los Angeles come from, is that they come out of the fact that there's so much poverty and there's no fucking jobs. When people come out of Vietnam, that's where we get these two sort of large gangs. And so he needed to set it up in a way that's like, this is kind of what these gangs are. They're just one of several factions of gang members in South Central Los Angeles, because otherwise we would not know what is happening at all. They would just be this like bunch of random dudes. And then after that, it would be this giant group of dudes and we would not understand why.
Right. Yeah. It requires just like a thread, something to kind of like give you a little context for. Because if they did not have this and we just rolled into this, like these sweeping shots of like dusty Los Angeles neighborhoods, with a little bit of voiceover to kind of tell you what's happening, I wouldn't know what the fuck was happening after this. Like this really is a very simple little setup. It's just like he does in The Fog, where they were like, you got to do something to kind of give this movie a little momentum, and that's what he does here. And
The Fog is arguably far more creative. But what he does do here that I think is really interesting is that he uses the radio as a narrative device, which is really cool to sort of set up like here, talks a little bit about the gangs coming through the radio. Okay. That's kind of a cool thing.
He eventually goes on to just out and out admit this. He uses Night of the Living Dead as a kind of like major influence on the story. And that's something that he just pulled from Night of the Living Dead.
He also uses it as his model for the gang itself, as he models them after the zombies. And you can really tell, but it really works in a very creepy way.
Yeah. Yeah. They're just shapes in the darkness. I love that about them. Yeah.
And so my note says the interracial makeup of this gang is probably not realistic.
No fucking
But then
way.
then the police start just opening fire on them. And my note says, but the police just start shooting, which probably is realistic.
Right. Because you hear the cops are like, put down your guns, put your hands on your head. And then like immediately they start shooting these guys
with like shotguns.
Yeah. They just hose them down in this, it's like 300 where like, there's just this like narrow alley and cops just murdering these guys.
Yep. And so these are all USC students and they're literally just throwing the blood onto their chests because they had no budget, no squibs. They were all, there's squibs later. There's lots of them, but like, at this point, this is the last thing they shoot. They have nothing left. So they're literally just throwing handfuls of it onto them as they fall to the ground.
I love that. I love it. Yeah. But the cops kill all the gangsters. So now we cut to the dusty neighborhoods around South Central LA.
So he says, because this is real fucking desolate looking.
It is.
They're in Compton.
There's a lot of like B-roll footage of Decline of Western Civilization, and then also she does it again in Suburbia. Like these are those neighborhoods. Yeah,
and so he says they had a problem with this because the area, even though it was kind of on the decline at that point, and it was getting a little bit dangerous, it didn't look quite so bad. And so he's like, we had to find a place that we could sort of dress down.
Like, we got to make it look worse than it is.
Yeah. Sometimes you need a make under. That's a Tina Belcher quote.
You know, I've never watched Bob's Burgers.
You should watch at least the first 5 seasons.
Okay. We see this as the voice of the police commissioner delivers a radio address about the juvenile gang situation in Los Angeles. And also there is a missing supply of police weapons that was stolen by one of the gangs. The gang is called Street Thunder.
Oh my God. And it's Street Thunder. It sounds like they're either like a amateur baseball team or a Christian rock band.
No, because like I remember like a long time ago, when I was doing like stuff for the Warriors, I'm like, what were these gangs really called? Because like they weren't called like the Warriors and shit. Like I looked it up and it was mostly like the 43rd Street Boys.
Yeah, it was a reference to where they lived, basically.
Yeah, like that's always what it was. They're like, you know,
and they're not just like, we're Street Thunder, coming at you live.
No. So yeah, as it would happen, those guns are in the possession of Street Thunder, who wordlessly stare at each other in their flop house.
Yeah, they're sitting there fucking stock still for no particular reason. They're just like, just chilling, just Romero and Che Guevara just chilling.
That's right. Yeah, so it's like there's 4 gangsters, and one of them is a white guy who's just known as White Warlord, and that's Frank Doubleday, who plays Romero, the pointy teeth guy with the funny hair in Escape from New York. Yeah, I love that guy. Yeah,
he's great.
Yeah. So
there's another dude who's like he's sort of like vaguely Juan Epstein-esque.
A little bit, yeah.
Nobody steal my joke. Yeah. Other podcasts.
Oh, motherfuckers. Yeah. So poor Frank Doubleday. He died back in 2018.
Yeah.
Yep. He had a look after decades of character work on TV.
Oh, I'm going to guess always as a bad guy.
Yes, always as a bad guy, like a nervous, twitchy little guy, because he's got that weird look about him, right?
Because then they all just start cutting themselves, just apropos of nothing. They all cutting themselves.
One of the guys just goes cholo, and okay. We're going to hear about this a little later on. Well, let's just address it right now.
I looked it up because I wanted to make sure I was right. I looked it up, and that is not what it means.
So cholo is just a street culture. It's a Mexican thing. It's not even a Mexican criminal thing. It's like a part of like Chicano power. It's just a fucking
a Mexican dude.
Yeah, that's it. And so. You know, I mean, I might be expecting a little too much out of John Carpenter coming off the mean streets of Bowling Green, Kentucky.
I know, but you know, it's I guess this is one of those moments. You know, we rewatch these, and a lot of times the shit does kind of hold up, especially his movies. I think really hold up. But like when you run into this with people like him, it's a little bit like, come on, man, you just came up with you came up with a Spanish word that you knew was sort of vaguely associated with Mexican culture, and that's racist, John Carpenter.
I know, because really what they're talking about here is, in the context of this movie, the cholo is just a fucking blood oath, and these guys they cut. Apparently quite deep because they fill a fucking jar with the blood.
Yeah, this is a punch bowl there, and they're like they're either they're like tough or they're goth teenagers, but they are just pouring this blood, filling up this big old punch bowl. Like one of you is going to be real weak at this point.
Right.
A little bit. At least one of you is woozy.
Hydrate, you guys. You can't do the cholo if you're not hydrated.
Yeah, have a cookie.
Yeah. So now later that afternoon, a highway patrolman, Lieutenant Ethan Bishop, drives to work. He receives his assignment for his shift over the radio, which is just a supervisory role for the police station at Precinct 9, District 13.
Now, there's a great line here, though, because, you know, again, I have criticized the writing of this, and I will continue to do so. But there is a great line because Bishop is a little bit like pissy about having to go do this kind of admin role. Yeah. And the captain tells him, there are no heroes anymore, Bishop, only men who follow orders.
Right.
And I feel like that is such a 70s thing to be like, we are the authority and this is all there is to it. You just go and do your job and don't ask questions. It's like, God damn, man.
Yep.
That's a great line.
It's a good line, man. It really is. Anyways, this station, what's happening is it's being shut down, it's being relocated, and he just has to go and hang out there until 4 a.m. when the next guy comes to sort of make sure that it all gets shut down. This is the last night that this place is going to be open, so it's just him and a skeleton crew over there. So, meanwhile, at one of the prisons in the city, Starker, played by Charles Cypher,
Yeah, Sheriff Brackett.
Yep. Who works for the Department of Corrections, is receiving prisoners for transfer. It's just a couple of regular dudes, just two normal men.
Yep, just normal, just innocent men.
One of whom is quite sick. And there's also a dangerous death row criminal.
Oh, fucking COVID McGillicuddy?
He is having a hard time.
They are not nearly as concerned about him as they should be.
Here's the thing. This is not like a sniffle and a cough. He seems to be actively dying from emphysema.
Yeah, this is Typhoid Mary. He's just like coughing all. He's not even covering his mouth.
No, it's him, and it flops sweat and like sweaty pits, and he is just doubled over in pain and agony, and they just sit him in the seat on this fucking bus that is otherwise unoccupied next to poor Wells, who's got to put up with this. So, there's a death row criminal also among them named Napoleon Wilson.
So Jostin apparently modeled this character off of Charles Bronson's character from Once Upon a Time in the West.
Okay.
And I think it really shows.
Yeah. The warden roughs him up a little while Starker isn't looking, and on the way into the bus, Wilson wraps the warden up with his chains and knocks him over. Also, he'd really like a cigarette.
So I think that the chain thing is actually pretty cool because they don't have any fucking money, so they really had to like figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many times Boss Hogg got hit in the head with that chain. Because it happened.
It's a real fucking chain. Like, it's probably something that happened in a Hawks movie, but that was with a rope, So John Carpenter says that on that day, there was like a really, really bad wildfire in Southern California. And he's like, you can see in the background, if you look at the sky, it's all like orange and red. And I was watching it, I was like, God damn, you really can. Like, they managed to film without smog, but like you can see like the sky is on fire. Damn. It really looks pretty cool. Yeah. So now elsewhere in the city, father and daughter are driving out to grandmother's house to talk her into leaving this rough neighborhood and into their house. I don't know who the actor's name is, but his
name is Martin something.
That's Kim Richards, who
now, if I remember correctly, Kim Richards was supposed to play Lindsay Wallace, right? But she was doing something else.
They got her sister.
And so they get her sister. Now, arguably, the better of the Richards, if you ask me.
Yeah. Oh, Kyle Richards?
Kyle Richards, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's like the one character that I actually liked in Watcher in the Woods.
Yep.
Refer to our Watcher in the Woods episode.
They never really explained what's going on here, right?
Well, you got to kind of piece it together by what they're talking about.
Because, the guy is super jittery. It's the vibe of a dude who just kidnapped that girl. It's got real, like, don't tell what we did energy to it. And I don't care for it, but like, eventually you realize that like, this is her father, but he's still like real jittery. Yeah,
it's like he showed up by surprise at school to pick her up, and now they're leaving.
Yeah.
They're leaving the state.
Now look, everybody, I write true crime every day. 6 or 7 days a week, I write about the most horrible shit. So as soon as I see this jittery dude in this car with this girl, I'm like, oh no. He's doing something not good. It's not good.
What you could put together from what they're talking about is grandmother lives in this part of Los Angeles. Her like grandfather has died somewhat recently, and they've got a place. They want to move her out of there into their house because they got a place for her, and like she shouldn't live in this like rough part of the city anymore. That's the thing. And he's instructing her to be the one who delivers the news, because otherwise she's never gonna fucking take it if he's the one who's like, "Hey Ma, you gotta move out of here."
Because they pass the cops at one point, and he's like, no, they're not gonna help us. Yeah, and so that's why it's got that like feeling of like, no, we don't talk to them.
Yeah.
Which is, again, I think kind of an interesting commentary on what's happening in California. I mean, the LAPD are like notoriously awful and always have been.
Oh, yeah. What was it? That Chips was a very deliberate
Well, Dragnet was also a very deliberate attempt to make the Los Angeles Police Department be friendly. That's why Jack Webb, who starred in Dragnet, he would like consult with the police a lot.
Yeah.
Like, this was a direct attempt to make them seem more friendly. Yeah, it's like, you shouldn't have to do that.
What year did all that Rampart stuff come out? Was that in the 80s?
It's late 60s into the 70s.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm way off then. Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe early 70s into mid to late 70s.
Okay, so yeah, but like, I mean...
Like around like Adam 12 and shit like that.
Yeah. So you're right. Like there's the LAPD has a certain reputation at this point that I think is kind of lost to the context of like the context of this movie is sort of lost to history without really knowing that. But yeah, at this time, the police department in Los Angeles was not well received.
And that is because there was a long history of them just like, pinning crimes on people who didn't do it, usually black people, or just not solving crimes or just being generally very abusive. I cannot tell you how many fucking stories I have written about like how they got confessions out of people. They would beat the crap out of them until they confessed. And so there was this deliberate attempt starting in the mid to late 60s to try to like make them seem friendlier. And I mean, I remember this shit like from the 80s when like they would be like, "You're a friendly neighborhood policeman." And it's like, well, he's not my neighborhood policeman. I don't trust him. He doesn't seem friendly to me. I have never in my life have I felt comfortable around police officers.
No.
Because they're always like super, horrible, aggressive men.
Oh shit, yeah. Like when I was when I was like 19, like 5 cops drew their guns on us because we were drinking beer at the train tracks. So
yeah, like it's and I mean this was when I worked with I worked with homeless people for like 10 years. And every single time we'd never try to call them, but like sometimes you have to, or we'd have to deal with them one way or another. And the women were always a little bit easier to deal with because they were a little bit nicer and not aggressive. And older cops, a lot of them were a little bit better, at least in Portsmouth they were. But the younger ones, I fucking hated dealing with them because they would come in and have to do the whole like masculinity thing. And every time I'd just be like, dude, like, look around you. This is a homeless shelter run by a bunch of, like, aging punk rockers. We're not impressed. We don't care. We just need you to take this person away.
Yeah.
And preferably not hit them while you do it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd like this idea, this happens over the 60s and the 70s. It's a tangent, but it happens over the 60s and 70s. And that's where we get they try to clean it up because they were so bad.
Yeah. So anyways, back to the movie. This father and daughter couple who he's definitely not kidnapping her from her mother, who he's probably just divorced. They're a little lost as they drive. The 4 guys from Street Thunder get into their car and assemble a series of guns.
Yeah, my note says Romero is back and he seems to be hanging out with some kind of werewolf.
Yeah. All these guns, very important. They've got suppressors on them.
Like regular gangs.
Yep. Now we cut back to Lieutenant Bishop, who arrives at the station, finds it in a pretty desolate location. Inside, they have most of it boxed up and ready to go. There's 1 officer on duty, a captain, and 2 receptionists here.
The captain, notably, is from The Searchers.
Oh, no shit. All right.
As John Carpenter says, this was, he says the guy's name, and he's like, he's John Wayne's favorite Indian. And I was like, there's so much to unpack in that one sentence.
Jesus
because this man is very white.
Oh my God. He's like, he could very, very easily play an Irish cop on Batman.
He is Irish cop too. That is who he is.
So now while waiting for the captain, Bishop has coffee with Lee, one of the receptionists, tells a story about the time his father sent him down to this very police station when he was a boy to turn himself in for swearing in front of his mother.
And she's making him coffee, and she turns to him and says, "Black?" And he says, "For over 30 years." Zing!
Such a great line.
Which is a really great line.
It is. Yeah. So while waiting at this place, as a boy, he carved something into the captain's desk. And Lee asks him what he carved, and he points out a frame to the very table that he's leaning on. We never see what he carved.
Which I think is a very clever moment.
There's a couple of those things.
I think this whole scene
does that with
really
Napoleon
good.
also, where everybody's like, "Why do they call you Napoleon?" He's like, "Listen, I'll tell you in a little while," and then they never get the chance to.
Which is super. That's a very Snake Plissken-y kind of move. Like you can really feel, and again, this is why I chose this movie. Is you can see what John Carpenter will become, and obviously we're saying this, with hindsight, but like. You can see there's witty dialogue. There's a lot of humanity in these characters that is just done through very simple tricks and like simple dialogue moments, like the coffee thing, black for over 30 years. It resolves a lot of like the weird, like the kind of whatever might be racial tension in the moment. Yeah. It's resolved with that. And like there's the The carving in the desk is like, it's such a kind of a moment of humanity where you're like, oh, I like these people.
Right.
Because we're never going to learn a fucking thing about them.
Yeah, it is worth noting that he is also the one black guy who walks into this police station. Like, it is a very white situation that we're dealing with.
And I think this is where you see that, Carpenter's politics coming out is like, he doesn't, if he had ignored it, I'm sure no one would have really noticed in 1976. You would notice now, though. Mm-hmm. And he sort of diffuses that whole thing by saying just this one quick comment for over 30 years. And it's a funny moment. And it's sort of the desk thing is very touching. And then we move on.
Yeah.
And it's great.
So that story also is a true story. It's
really?
Yeah. Not the carving on the desk part, but my father sent me down here with the note to, turn myself in. Alfred Hitchcock's dad did that to him. And that is something that Carpenter read in Francois Truffaut's biography of Hitchcock.
Now, here's the thing, everybody. That is wasting police resources.
Yes.
Don't do cutesy shit like that. They have other things to do, like catch serial killers.
Yeah. So the harried police captain is busily redirecting calls to his station for criminal activity, and he rattles off a laundry list of crimes reported just that day. Bishop blames it on sunspot activity, which I guess is a thing that was kind of like in the news in the 70s.
Yeah, that feels very kind of astrology, very new age.
Well, no. I looked it up, and I didn't bother to fucking write the details down because who cares? But there was a scientific paper published in 1976 that kind of proposed this, like, why was there so much crime in the summer of, this particular year? I think of 1975. And he was like, well, there's sunspot activity that does this, which is why Bishop kind of is like, sunspot activity puts a little pressure on the atmosphere. It's fucking nonsense. But like, it was a thing.
Yeah, listen, I don't want to get all Michael Marshall on you, but I think someone might need to do a little bit more digging into that to find out if that's true.
Yeah, but anyways, I thought that this was interesting because that really grimy Giallo autopsy also involves sunspot activity.
Hey, everybody, that movie Autopsy is fucking gross.
It is unreal. I fucking... one day we'll have to do it because I wrote like 3,000 words on the weird psychosexuality of that movie. But
I think I watched that around the same time I can't remember what that... My Dear Killer or something. That movie, I was so deeply upset by that movie.
I think they're in the same box set that Arrow put out.
Because I told you to watch it, and I remember you texting me. You were like, "I'm not comfortable with this anymore."
Anyway, while loading the last shotgun in the station, the captain explains that Bishop has to hang out until 4 a.m. when the next cop comes in to take over. Just answer phones, redirect people who wander in. Real easy.
And then out of nowhere, the captain just freezes like Mitch McConnell for like a hard 10 seconds, and they're just sort of sitting there.
Yeah. So,
I guess when they were loading the shotgun in one take, it went off like right in Deborah Hill's ear.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. So all of this would be pretty easy, that is, were it not for the 4 Street Thunder guys driving around with a rifle.
And my note says, Jesus, Romero, go wash your face. You look like a 5-year-old.
He's dirty as hell, man.
Yeah, he's like, you're a criminal, not a Victorian street urchin.
You're looking like a little chimney boy.
He really does. It's like, why do they all have dirt on their face? What are you doing? You're an adult. And you know what? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go off on a little tangent again here. I live in a place that is very densely packed, and I have lots of people around me all the time. And I swear to God, the number of times I hear people that are just like singing and dancing and clapping, I'm like, you are adults. Why are you acting like this? Same thing here.
You gotta find your joy where you can.
Same thing here, Romero. Why do you have dirt on your face? What were you doing? You look like you've been reading a newspaper all day, and then you started touching your face a bunch.
Yep. So they're looking for someone to shoot. Should they shoot the old lady with the groceries? Should they shoot the wino? And what's this? The chiming song of an ice cream truck is heard.
Yeah, even the Street Thunder gang can't resist the allure of the ice cream man.
Everybody loves Mr. Softy.
But hey, listen, I think this is another interesting moment where this fear about just sort of random violence, like the idea that they're just driving around looking for someone to shoot.
So this reminded me of what you used to see all the fucking time in the late 80s and the early 90s, particularly with movies having to do with Los Angeles, because the fucking crack put the Bloods and the Crips very squarely in the headlines. And everybody was like, what if I can't go outside? What if there's a drive-by? And it's like, guys, that doesn't fucking happen. That happens in falling down. Like that.
Yeah. Or like, what, if someone drives by when they flash their lights or you flash your lights.
Or they're playing the knockout game.
Yeah, it's very much, it has that feeling of like, this was a very real fear that people thought. I mean, again, it's usually white people that were afraid of this, that like these gangs were just committing violence all over the place. Now, it is true that this does occasionally happen, that someone does unfortunately get killed in a crossfire or in some sort of drive-by. But the reality is, and always has been, they are trying to kill each other, not random people. They're not just driving around looking for random people to murder.
Yeah. Jesus H. Christ. Sensing trouble, the ice cream man reaches for the pistol that he has hidden under the dash, but Thunder seems to drive away.
And you know what? The ice cream man's shirt, it's not very dignified.
What does it say?
It just has, it looks like nurse's scrubs. It just has like ice cream cones or some shit all over it, but it's very colorful. I'm like, this guy, I don't have a lot of respect for him right now.
No. So
he's just trying to make a living, and here I am judging him for his shirt.
How dare you? So classist.
I know.
Back on the bus, Starker takes a seat next to Wilson while the sick guy coughs and coughs. And
he's not even covering his mouth.
No, just letting it all out. Just what do you call it? Expectorating all over fucking poor Wells. So Wilson is in for the murder of some people. It's all very hazy. Starker wants to know why he did it. And Wilson looks real haunted for a second, and he tells some real Western style story about a time.
Yeah, he's like, hey man, why does Johnny Ringo do anything?
Yeah, this is about a preacher who told him he had a way of death about him. And being young and stupid, he believed him. So apparently that was his motivation for murdering however many people he murdered.
He's a hooker with a heart of gold is what he is.
He really is. Because you're going to love him by the end of the movie. Caldwell, the sick prisoner, is getting really, really bad, with his condition worsening and 6 hours to go to their destination. Starker has to have the driver bring them to the nearest precinct, which is Anderson, Precinct 9, District 13, or Precinct 14, depending on how we're doing this.
How pedantic you're going to be.
Yeah. So now, lost, father and daughter stop at a phone booth to make a call. Daughter sees the ice cream man in the distance, and her dad gives her some money for some ice cream. However, menacing synthesizer music starts, and the Street Thunder crew makes another drive-by. And the ice cream man relaxes when they appear to drive away. And then daughter buys an ice cream from him and then heads back to the car. But the Street Thunder guys return, and they get out, terrorizing the driver. Now, realizing that the ice cream man gave her the wrong flavor, she goes back to the ice cream truck and finds the white warlord there, who just fucking shoots her without even looking at her.
Yeah, because she's like, hey, this is just vanilla. Yeah. And my note says, damn it, Kim Richards, that's what you get for being greedy. Yeah. Now, apparently, the MPA
demanded I was about to talk about this because
I fucking this one get cut. And so they gave them an edited version without this scene and then just sent out the original anyway.
Yes. They're like, here, fine, we cut that scene out. Okay, put that scene back in. Don't tell nobody.
Which I think is really great. So, but even that Carpenter says
it's not even, it's shocking, but it's not that fucking gory.
I mean, it is a pretty shocking moment, but only because killing children is taboo.
Okay, that's definitely.
Now, I hate when people are real precious about kids. I get it, whatever. I'm not a fan of children. I'm not really a fan of people in general, but definitely not children. But John Carpenter says he's not sure if he would include this again. He was like, he basically says like, I don't think it's gratuitous. I don't think it's, like it's not an unnecessary moment. It's a pretty plot critical moment in the film. But he's not sure if you would put it in again. And I'm like, come on, man.
I know. I mean, there's definitely other ways that they could have illustrated, like, precisely how evil these guys are. But, like, this scene in particular is like, oh, Jesus Christ, holy shit, he shot that girl.
Yeah, because he just turns and shoots her, and the blood on her face and the ice cream.
And it's not a squib either. It's like they shot her with a fucking paintball or something.
Yeah. It's pretty rough.
Yep.
And then her dad, who we can just call MacGuffin Smith.
Right. Yeah. So when Dad gets off the phone, he looks and sees the two of them dead on the ground because they also shot the ice cream man. and he loses his mind, and then he retrieves because he is also like, he's like dealing with his dead daughter, and then the ice cream man's not fully dead, and he's like, there's a gun in the truck, grab it and go fucking kill those guys. So he goes and
I do like that the ice cream man is like, go avenge my death.
Avenge me. And so so he gets it and gets into his car and fucking chases the Street Thunder guys. Now, at the station, Bishop puts up a sign redirecting everybody to the new station at 1977 Ellendale Place, which was Carpenter's first address when he moved to Los Angeles to go to USC. And as he's doing this, the transfer bus arrives, and Starker and Bishop argue a bit about bringing in the men until so they can like call a doctor and shit. Bishop eventually relents. Now,
because he's like, if what that man has is infectious, it's like, if what that man has is infectious, you all already have it because he has been spitting his gross mucus all over all of you for the last 2 hours.
I know, the interior of that bus is a fucking, what do you call it? A super fun sight. Like, it is so fucked up. So, out in the streets, Father chases the gang until they spin out in a vacant lot. And the three of the guys run off into the darkness of the night. But the White Warlord tries to shoot Dad with a rifle, but Dad gets a drop on him and empties the pistol into him. And he says, this is where Carpenter on the commentary says, Frank Doubleday knows no fear. He is a machine and he dies like one. I love that because he does.
John Carpenter, are you alone in a room saying this stuff?
John Carpenter is probably very high.
Oh, yeah,
so
he is.
It's very poetic when he's
just like, he goes off into the universe, man. That is where he lives now. Where do you find Frank Doubleday? Was Frank Doubleday ever really here?
We've all got a little Frank Doubleday in us.
Yeah. What are we if not a little Frank Doubleday every day?
So, but the thing is like, he gets shot and he kind of like looks at himself for a second, and then he like looks back up and the dude shoots him a bunch more times, and then he just kind of like he gets this look like, what the fuck? And then he falls over.
It's actually a pretty cool moment.
It is a pretty cool moment.
I mean, in Carpenter's defense, he is a machine and he dies like that.
If you're going to commit to this idea that these guys are like, are not people, but are like a force of nature, like that's one way to fucking communicate it.
Because they never, like, these are the only ones that we ever actually see.
Yeah.
And they never really talk to each other. Nope. There's like a couple moments, but that's it.
Mm-hmm. Traumatized, Dad wanders away and the gangsters...
Yeah, MacGuffin just takes off without the car.
Returns to find their guy dead. Dad shuffles off until he finds a phone booth and he starts to make a call, but he spots several of the Street Thunder guys suddenly emerging from the darkness with those stolen police weapons. And then they chase him to the police station where even more gangsters emerge. He's unable to speak, however, which is annoying as hell. Like fucking...
It has this moment, I think, is pretty cool. The way that the gang sort of like, they keep multiplying.
Right, because at first
and they're coming out of like
and
weird
then, like,
places.
In the next shot, there's like 6 of them. And then like eventually there's like a crowd of them running through the parking lot.
And the way that they sort of multiply is very subtle, but very cool. It reminds me a little bit of the Warriors.
Yes, like when they first run into the Furies.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that actually made me think, like, if there was anybody that I would compare to John Carpenter, it would probably be Walter Hill.
Yeah, because they're both sort of operating from the same sort of framework where both of them are just making Westerns.
Yeah, but they're very imaginative, very creative, like really kind of like swinging for the fences most of the time.
Yeah. So now Starker... no. The duty officer looks outside and he sees no one. So this is after, like, they're trying to calm this guy down and get him to talk. But so he goes to the window and he sees no one. Starker calls the operator looking for backup, but then the phone goes dead and then the power goes out. And then the duty officer, but the thing is the thing that, like, nobody really thinks this is weird immediately because this is what they're expecting to happen just a little later on. So the duty officer goes outside to his car to call a nearby station, but then the gang shoots him from their hiding spots.
And this is where she goes. This is where Nancy Lubis says, "Cheney just fell down."
But she says,
and she says it like she's laughing at like a pratfall, like he just like slipped and fell on a banana peel or something like that.
Yeah.
So she says I watched a interview with her, and she says that she was really nervous because this was like. She had been acting since she was a child, like in plays and shit. And she'd done like student movies and stuff like that. But this was the first time she was in a movie with like actual actors and they were making a feature. And she was really nervous the whole time. Huh. And I think you can really tell that she is.
She's definitely like her deliveries. There's an apprehension to the way that she delivers everything.
Yeah. And I love her. I think she's a fantastic actor. I think she brings something really kind of like sassy and warm to everything that she's in.
Yeah.
And in this movie, it's like, you're not the Annie Brackett I know and love.
Not yet.
But to be fair, look, if the gang didn't get Cheney, the COVID would have. So.
Right. So Bishop goes out to check on him, but before he can even get close, the gang fires on him and he retreats back to the station. Now, Starker decides to load the prisoners back onto the bus, but before he can, the gang opens fire, killing the 2 duty guards. Caldwell, the sick prisoner, thank God, and Starker himself, who just gets blasted in the back.
Yeah.
Wilson and Bishop manage to get back into the station, where the other prisoner, Wells, is still waiting. Bishop, not realizing what's happening yet, puts Wells and Bishop back in their cells. Or I'm not Bishop, Wells and Wilson back in their cells, while the sort of growing gang outside just starts to shoot the place up. And there is now a prolonged series of shots where the station is just being shot to pieces. It's just like, here's the window getting shot out a whole shitload. And now there's like papers flying through the air. And you hear that like ricochet gunshot sounds and shit.
So this is where that scene is that he was so upset about, because there's so many cuts in this scene. He's like, I think for the most part, you can't really see it. You can see it every once in a while, but then there's one that's like so hard that clearly gets fucked up. And it's like, there it is. That's the one.
Goddamn.
Because you can really tell in like HD. Now, here's where I'm going to come in with the white hot night of hate bullshit. Because this is like they're out to kill everyone in Precinct 13. Not really. They're just after this one guy because he killed Romero.
Well,
because otherwise they would not. That's why he's the MacGuffin. Otherwise they would not have shown up here.
Wow, Jesus Christ. I mean, maybe. I think this is where things kind of crossed a little bit. Because my whole thing was, I thought they were doing this as revenge for the cops just like murdering those guys at the very beginning of the movie.
This is the bad writing part of it, is like, you kind of think so, but like they go there, they chase him there. That's why they go there.
Right.
That's why she says they just want him. Just give him to them and it's over.
Yeah. Yeah. Which,
and it's like,
which honestly, I mean, I might just send that dude out there.
Look, we all would. Let's all just be honest. We'd be like, look, he hasn't even said anything. I don't know anything about him.
Yeah. I mean, he maybe he deserves this.
If he was nicer and would talk to us, then fine. Yeah. But he's being an asshole and he's being, he's not saying a word.
Let's all just err on the side of caution.
And sacrifice this man. He is clearly the MacGuffin of this. But yeah, that is what this whole movie is like. They're out to kill everybody. It's like, not really. They just want to kill this one dude.
Yeah. So when the mayhem subsides, Bishop hands his pistol over to Lee and has her stand watch. As she gives them the lay of the land, most of the houses around them are empty and condemned. There's nobody nearby to hear the war that's going on, and everybody in the police station is trapped.
And the gang is sort of back to moving in this really it's kind of unnerving to look at.
Because you see a couple of shots that are very well choreographed, where like a couple of guys come running out and then they both hit the dirt like simultaneously. Like everybody seems to be moving in a very choreographed action. It's neat.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, like years and years and years ago, like before this movie had really sort of like entered into my consciousness or anything like that, he's like, "Have you ever seen Assault on Precinct 13?" I said, I was like, no. He's like, it's a weird movie, and he's like, I think like you could make a case that this is like an alien invasion movie because of the way that the gang is. Like you never see them; they're just this shape in the darkness. They've got this weird way that they all kind of move, and I don't think he's wrong. Like it's very
well, and that's that supernatural element to it, is that they feel like they're just this invading kind of malevolent force. You can only ever see them kind of in shadow. They're like the sailors in The Fog.
Yeah,
like
they
just sort of move in this really weird way.
So,
yeah.
And it's, again, that was like a deliberate production design move by Carpenter.
Yeah. And so like, while this is kind of a flimsy plot and it's not a great movie, like there are moments in it where you're like, oh, I see what you're going to become and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. For a time, it appears that the gang is gone now, but after some arguing and panic, dozens of them approach from behind the tree line. A few gangsters appear. They approach the station and they throw down that jar of blood from before, just smearing it on the concrete in front of the place.
Now, look, who just carries around a jar of blood?
Cholo.
No, I think the jar of blood is Cholo.
The blood is Cholo,
but is Cholo a character?
Maybe they call him like
is Cholo a definite article?
Maybe it's like the dude. I don't know. And then they also like bring out like a banner with like the gang's sigil on it. Marking the station for death. Bishop realizes now that they're fully under siege.
This is when Annie's like, just send him out there.
Yep, that's what she says.
Like, look, Annie, you can't just go handing over victims like that.
Yeah. But also now, like realizing like we had a problem, he sends Lee back to get Wells and Wilson out of their cells as the station comes under fire again. And she gets Wells out safe, but as she's getting Wilson, she can hear the gang like banging on the back door to get in. And so she gets the door to Wilson's cell open, but the gang breaks in and like she kicks one of them in the balls, and then they chase her into the cell. And Wilson does that thing where he, like puts the guy's arm in the bars and like breaks it on the bars. It's like a nasty arm break move.
Even though it is very clearly a mannequin.
It's still the shit.
You're just like, I can still picture it. It's awful.
Yeah. But then they manage to sort of get their way back to the main station. Wilson is trying to hold the door as more of them are coming in, and Bishop tries to break open the box containing the shotgun right in the station. When he gets it out, he tosses it to Wilson, and this is a fucking badass move because this is
the scene from Rio Bravo. This is a direct lift from Rio Bravo.
Yeah, because he like tosses it to him, he turns and just blasts the hallway with like 3 shells. It's so fucking great.
Yeah.
The gang.
But the other thing is they all just kind of like. The gang is just kind of like running into the gunfire. Like there's no strategy here. They're all just kind of like pouring in. It's like fish in a barrel.
It's this wall of death.
Pouring into the hallways.
A wave of men coming in. And so the gang sort of like makes their move on the station, trying to come through the windows, but now everybody in the station is armed. And
this is also where we get our John Carpenter cameo very, very briefly.
Oh, really? Is one of the guys coming through the window?
He's one of the ones coming through the window, yeah.
Yeah. Like they're just coming through and like everybody's got a gun now and they're just shooting them before they can get in. And then after like things like calm down again, we get that little electric piano motif as things sort of chill.
The electric piano one, that's the one where I'm just like, this feels like it was taken from like ER.
Right.
Like it's this like weird like 80s kind of sitcom interstitial music.
Yeah. They regroup in the tense silence that follows the attack and find that Julie, the receptionist, was shot in the last wave.
A girl. She didn't have to go out like that.
Nope. When they go back to the windows, they find that the gang moved their cars back into place, and they removed all the bodies of the guys, so it looks like nothing happened.
Now, this feels a little bit unrealistic. I mean, obviously the whole thing is unrealistic, but like
it takes like 3 minutes for them to clear their dead.
Yeah.
And they steal the bus.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, also, Bishop finds what you might call Chekhov's tank of acetylene.
But my note actually says it's Chekhov's acetylene tank.
Yeah. Oh, when Wells hears about the Cholo, which is, like we said, used incorrectly here. Man. He suddenly gets like real scared, and he's like, I was in a prison cell with one of these guys.
One of what guys?
Yes. I don't know. Presumably one of those guys out there in the yard, maybe even. He says what it means is this gang does not care what happens to them as long as they get the people inside. They will stop at nothing.
Now, I will argue that is not true.
I know.
They obviously very much care.
Yeah. Wells intends to peace out on his own 2 feet, but everybody talks him down from that because he's
going to call it. I call this plan save ass. Now look,
hashtag save ass.
I don't write movies. I've never written a movie. I bet it's hard. That is a fucking terrible line.
I know. It's like we got this, man. We got this by the ass.
I was just about to say we got this by the ass. It's like when people swear in a way that you can tell they don't swear very often.
Oh, sure.
It's like children.
Yeah, it's
or
like,
southern
when you're
southern women. Like you're.
It's like when you're watching a movie and like somebody is smoking in the movie, and this person clearly is not a smoker in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call this save ass.
Yeah. So yeah, they all take stock of their ammo. There's 3 shells in the shotgun. There's 3 shells in Bishop's rifle. There's 2 shells in Lee's pistol. And Wells' gun has been empty the entire time.
And there's 8 fucking piles of bodies. Presumably every one of them has a gun. Why don't they just take those?
I know. Just go pick up the guns, man. There's plenty of bullets in those things. Yep. So not much to last them. Wilson finally gets a cigarette when Lee coolly lights it for him.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. Whenever I see somebody light a match, not on the sort of like friction surface, like they use the fucking bottom of their boot or like their thumbnail or something, I'm always like, God damn, you are the coolest person in the world. Stylistic.
That's the cool. They're the coolest people in the world.
Yeah. Now elsewhere, a nearby squad car is called from dispatch, alerting them to calls about either fireworks or gunfire reported in the area.
Now this feels very disconnected from the rest of the narrative. Like, I can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to kind of build it out a little bit to explain why nobody is coming, but it doesn't feel connected to the rest of the story.
No, because we spend a little more time with these guys than you sort of expect to.
And there's a little bit like, I think he does this consistently through his movies a lot, where they're like a little bit like bumbling.
Yeah. But
like
yeah,
they're not treated with the kind of deference and authority that one would normally see them as.
No, these guys. This is a sort of tension, suspense building moment because, like, they're out there, they're right nearby. As a matter of fact, they drive by the road where the police station is on, and the guy's like, "Well, why don't we check down there?" And he's like, "The fucking police station's down there. There's nothing happening down there." They just keep going.
You lazy motherfucker.
Yep. So everybody in the station decides to make a run for one of the cars in the lot to go get help, but they have no keys, so someone has to go out and hotwire it. Naturally, the criminals know how to do this, but neither is willing to take the risk, so they do 1 potato, 2 potato to see who will go.
And this is another one of those. This is a little bit like the desk moment where you're like, this is a fun bit of humanity.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think this sort of feels a little bit like, maybe not Snick Plissken, but like this is a little bit like a They Live moment.
For sure, yeah.
Like the scene in They Live where they're just like beating the shit out of each other for like 10 minutes straight. It has that kind of vibe to it.
Yep. So Wells is the loser, so he has to go and will sneak out through a sewer drain, which is accessible from the station in its basement. So when Wells leaves, Wilson remarks to Lee and Bishop that the basement might make a good place for a last stand. So Wells emerges from the sewer, and he crawls over to the car, but the gang spots him and they approach. And he manages to get the car going, pulls away before anyone can shoot him. And then he pulls up to the phone booth that we saw from before, feeling like he's about to get away and save everyone, but before he can do anything...
he's got it by the ass.
Yep. Before he can do anything, one of the gang guys appears in the backseat with a rifle and shoots him. And everybody...
And look, it's a fucking downer.
It is. Everybody's optimism withers.
You kind of like Wells, and then I think Bishop says something like maybe it was just breaking glass somewhere else, and they all just like have this kind of hang dog, Joe Biden just miffed it again kind of look.
The gang rallies for one last hit with even more guys than before. Wilson, Lee, and Bishop head to the basement to make their last stand. They grab the traumatized father on the way.
I would have just left him.
I like most of the time,
guy.
like when he's laying there next to Julie's body, I was like, did they kill him too? Good.
I mean, that would have been me. I would have been like, you sure? I think he's dead. We should just go.
We could just go to the basement now. It's fine. So
stop. Don't look. Just stop it. Come on.
Yeah. Now Lee and Wilson have a real sort of Western flavored character moment.
Oh, it's so melodramatic. It's fucking cheesy as hell.
Yeah. They make a big shield out of the metal sign, and Chekhov's acetylene tank makes another appearance as he leaves it at the end of the hall as a trap.
Yeah, but like so I think the shield with the sign thing it's a little strange and cheesy, but it's kind of cool. It works.
Yeah, because it's like it spans the entire hallway, and so like if they put it across the door, like they can use it because the gang is going to like press against it. It's a little flawed. If they shoot any bullets at that thing, it's just going to go straight through it. But
also, if you shoot a propane tank, it's not going to stop the from fucking blowing into you as well.
No, there's going to be metal shards going fucking everywhere, including straight through that sign.
Yeah, but like he attaches flares to it. I'm like, hey, look, you're being flashy now.
Yeah, easy now.
Just shoot the fucking thing. Like,
Yeah, so up top, the patrol car returns, and the cops debate about what to do. The station appears empty, but in the background, you can see the gang members like running back and forth.
which is pretty cool.
It's a neat touch. They're about to leave when they hear what sounds like rain coming down, but then the driver goes to see what it really is, and he finds blood on the roof of the car. And the phone company.
This is another moment where I'm just like, wait, what?
Yeah, because he's inside the car and he's like, "That's not rain." I'm like, "How the fuck do you know?"
And I think this is the AD who's the guy up in the power line or whatever.
So he's the phone company lineman is dead and suspended from his position up the telephone pole. And they call in an emergency, which ought to bring in the cavalry. So this we're rounding the corner here.
Literally the cavalry.
Yeah. Now, back in the basement, they can hear the gang setting the station on fire with Molotov cocktails. Wilson and Bishop walk the sign shield down the hall to see what's going on. Bishop.
So
whistles.
the moment with the Molotov cocktails, this is sort of interesting. I had never thought of this. Carpenter says, I had to be able to impart to the viewer that like the place is being flooded with these gang members. He was like, there was no way, we had no money, so we couldn't like keep doing more shots. So I had to make it sound like they're coming in. And this is where that like audio, where you're pumping all that money into the audio,
yes,
the sound recording. And it's like, it really does work. Like you can kind of hear boots shuffling and like glass breaking. He's like that. I think that's kind of a neat way to do that. Mm.
Yeah. Bishop also is whistling a tune in this scene. That's the electric piano motif that Carpenter's been using throughout the movie.
And I think Napoleon turns to him and says something like, "It's real pretty."
It's real pretty, yeah. The gang finally breaks through and attacks. Wilson manages to shoot a couple, but they pull the gun away and they push him back to the boiler room. With the door barred, Bishop takes 2 shots at the acetylene tank and misses. He hits on the third one, which blows the tank in attached flares and blasts every gangster in the hall, killing them. And so backup finally arrives. We find the charred remains of the gang in the hall. The 4 survivors in the boiler room, just fine.
And you can see the rest of the gang members start running away. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem like it's to the death now, does it? You're not super committed to this anymore.
Yeah. So they take the traumatized father out on a stretcher. They're going to bring Lee out on one, and she walks out.
So
herself.
you skipped. There is an actual really cool moment too, when like the reinforcements come running down the stairs, and like the whole hall's like filled with smoke, and the smoke starts to dissipate. It's just the 3 of them standing there.
Yes, it is very.
And they
very
kind
cool.
of emerge. It's a really cool looking, and that's Carpenter says that's his favorite shot in this movie. I think it's arguably the best shot in the whole movie. And he goes, "Yeah, they don't make them like this anymore for good reasons."
Right. Yeah. So then the cops go to put Wilson in cuffs, but Bishop like literally throws them off so they can walk out together. Roll credits.
Yeah, is it a good movie? Nah, it's a fun.
You know what?
That's fine.
I have a hard time with this one because I love John Carpenter so much, but these first couple of overtures towards like feature filmmaking are just so wobbly. It's like him kind of trying to learn how to ride a bike, and it's a little painful to watch because this movie's very unevenly paced.
You show this to a high school film class.
Yeah,
like you show them this and then you show them Escape from New York, or you show them this and then you show them Big Trouble in Little China.
I would even go so far to say like you want to see the contrasts in like how much this guy grows as a filmmaker. I just show him fucking Halloween. Yeah,
well, because that's what, 2 years later, a year later, 2 years later.
Well, the production is a year later. Like,
yeah,
he jumped right into that, and
because we didn't say it. This is the movie that gets Mustafa Akkad like so into John Carpenter. This is one that gives him. He's like, I'm going to give you a bunch of money. Go make a babysitter slasher movie.
Yeah, but
I understand that. I can see like you can watch this and be like, this guy's got something.
Yeah. As a sort of like, I don't know, like if I were to do a sort of John Carpenter review and just like show a few of his movies, I would definitely include this one in it. But as a sort of like look, I'd put it either at the end or I'd put it at the beginning of like a John Carpenter film festival and just be like, this is where he kind of started and this is where he goes. And there's definitely like a movie, like a progression there that you could see where he fucking really hits his stride with Halloween. Like he figures it out. It's not much more money than this one, but in terms of like character and story and suspense and like it is a massive leap away from this one, because like this is not a movie that I would ever really kind of go out of my way to watch. It's if it's on and there's nothing else going on, maybe I'd watch it, but
I think of the three that we have watched, because we've now watched this, Halloween, and The Fog, and you can see this arc. Like this is a guy who can do a lot with not much.
Yes, yeah, he's extremely resourceful,
and some of that is, I think, there's a kind of leadership in that he is rallying. You know, this is sort of like Jodorowsky with Dune. Like he's rallying and inspiring people to want to participate in this. And everybody's doing all these weird fucking side jobs and shit. And like everyone's doing their part. Like this is smart filmmaking. This is, economic filmmaking where he is letting people do what they do. And it's really coming through. Like these are talented people. And he's getting the best out of everybody. And like you can see it here, and it just keeps growing as they go. And he's doing so much with so little, even so little of a story. Like, there's not much here. There's not much to Halloween. There's not much to The Fog. And yet you can sit down and become engrossed in all of these.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of that is, some of that is writing. I think in Halloween and in The Fog, I think a lot of that has to do with writing. And a lot of it has to do with Deborah Hill.
Yeah, once he's got his super group together, there's no stopping him. But these are the formative years. I could certainly see that. There are certain things about this that I definitely like. And the sort of comparison to The Fog was very smart, because they're similar movies in ways that you're not really expecting. In spite of the fact that there is no character arc for anybody in this movie, I still like all of them a lot. I love Lee. I think Lieutenant Bishop is cool. Wilson is my favorite character in the entire movie. Surprise, surprise. I also love Snake Plissken. So it all just kind of makes sense. It's enjoyable. It's just not quite there yet, in terms of where things are going. But
yeah, for some reason, I kept thinking about this. Kept reminding me of the Ramones' first album, where
right,
I was just
it's not quite there. It's not Leave Home. It's not Rocket to Russia.
But there's something there. You're gonna do so much cool shit after this, but there's something to this that I can listen to it, and I be I know you guys are gonna do awesome shit.
Yeah.
And I still I love this for what it is. Will I watch this one a lot? No, but I own it. And I like it.
Yeah.
And I think it is a pretty cool representation of this is someone who can do so much with so little. And in that way, I guess maybe I understand some of his frustration with the industry is I'm fucking good at this. Why don't you all see that?
See, here's the thing. I think that this is what we are uncovering a sort of reality about with just these two movies that we've done back to back has helped me sort of sift away a lot of the sort of detritus and get to the heart of the matter. And the fact is that as Carpenter's budgets got bigger, they hamstrung him. He's a guy who should have been working on nothing, because he did his best work when he was just scraping. Now, obviously, he probably doesn't want to do that as a guy going into his 30s or 40s. Having a bigger budget and a studio behind him must have been much better than having to stay up all fucking night for weeks on end.
I don't know. He said this is the most fun he ever had making a movie.
Jesus Christ. But yeah, I think that
But I think you're right. I think when you look at something like Big Trouble in Little China, or those are fun movies, but they're not the same.
Yeah, yeah. I think that when he had more money than he kind of knew what to do with, things didn't quite work out as well as these early movies.
You feel like you have to spend it, and you don't need it, and so you end up being sort of gratuitous and a little bit cheesy.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
All right. Assault on Precinct 13, y'all. So, hey, what's next?
Well, as you know, Bring Me the Axe is coming back next week, and we're going to be watching I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, there's a reason for it, and I will explain that later, but just for now, know that we are going to watch this movie, and I think by the tone and both of our voices, you can pretty much guess how we feel about it. But 99 Cent Rental will be back in 2 weeks with the quintessentially 80s canon films bonkers He-Man take, Masters of the Universe.
Oh yeah. Fucking I've been looking forward to this one for a while. This is gonna be fun.
I'm pretty sure we're not gonna be alone for that one. So
cool. Yeah, I hope this guest comes through, because he's a lot of fun. All right,
he's a goddamn delight.
So all right, be back here in a week for I Know What You Did Last Summer. God damn it, and we'll see you in 2 with Masters of the Universe.
Woo!